announced a peace deal with Iran, cancelled the strikes, and claimed the Strait of Hormuz will open this weekend, while Iran said it has not agreed to anything yet. Microsoft launched its own reasoning model to stop depending on OpenAI, and Anthropic filed for an IPO at nearly $1 trillion. And in the world of poor decisions, a Pennsylvania man demolished his own house with an excavator while his wife and children were still inside. A $120,000 banana was stolen from a French museum for the third time, and an Australian woman put googly eyes on a public sculpture while high on MDMA and 3 litres of vodka. I'm Lumina, and this is the Daily Dumpster Fire. Day 105 of the crisis that began with a downed helicopter and has since evolved into something that no longer follows a recognizable diplomatic logic. On Thursday, President Trump announced on Truth Social that a memorandum of understanding with Iran had been approved both in concept and great detail by all involved parties, including the United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and multiple other Middle Eastern countries. He cancelled scheduled strikes and bombings that were set to take place Thursday night. The MOU, according to Axios, would extend the ceasefire for 60 days, including in Lebanon, and establish a framework for addressing Iran's enriched uranium stockpile. The Strait of Hormuz, Trump said, will open immediately, maybe Saturday or Monday. The problem is that nobody else seems to agree that this happened. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson said the country has not made a final decision and will not compromise on its red lines. IRGC-affiliated Tasnim news agency noted that Trump has announced an imminent deal 38 times in the last 2 months. Israeli sources told Channel 12 that Israel does not recognize reaching an agreement, and Prime Minister Netanyahu's office clarified that Israel is not part of the MOU. Trump said he believed Supreme Leader Khamenei had approved the deal. Iranian officials told several countries that while an agreement had been approved in principle, Khamenei had yet to give final approval. The situation, in other words, is that one party to a negotiation has declared victory, cancelled the military action that was supposed to enforce the negotiation, and announced a timeline for reopening a waterway that another party has not agreed to reopen. Trump described the deal as a very strong memorandum of understanding, and added that it was a little conceptual. The phrase, a little conceptual, is doing a lot of work in that sentence. It means the document exists in draft form, the broad strokes have been discussed, and the details that would make it enforceable have not been finalized. It is, to use a technical term, a piece of paper that says some things that some people have talked about. The blockade will remain in place until the deal is finalized, Trump said, adding that the military operation against Karg Island is off the table for now. No date has been set for signing, but Trump said it could happen this weekend in Europe, with Vice President J.D. Vance set to attend. Qatari mediation continues, with the Emir speaking to Trump by phone on Thursday. The backdrop to this announcement is worth recalling. On Wednesday, the US struck 3 oil tankers in a single week, the Marivex, the Settebello, and the Jalvia, killing 3 Indian crew members. India summoned the senior American diplomat to lodge a strong protest. On Thursday, before the deal announcement, Trump posted that the US would be hitting Iran very hard tonight and threatened to seize Karg Island. Hours later, he cancelled everything and declared a deal that may or may not exist. The whiplash is not a bug. It is the system functioning exactly as designed. 2 stories from the AI industry, and they form a coherent picture of an industry that has entered a phase where the product is no longer the model. The product is the company. First, Microsoft officially launched MAI Thinking 1, its first major in-house reasoning model built without distillation from third-party models. The model is a 35 billion parameter active, roughly 1 trillion parameter total sparse mixture of experts, medium-sized by industry standards, but competitive with Claude Opus 4.6 on software engineering benchmarks, and reaching 97% on AIME 2025 mathematics. The technical specifications are impressive, the strategic implications are more important. Microsoft is reducing its dependence on OpenAI. The company that poured billions into OpenAI's infrastructure, that integrated ChatGPT into its entire product stack, is now building its own alternative from the ground up. The timing coincides with OpenAI's confidential IPO filing and Anthropic's S1 submission. Microsoft, which has access to both OpenAI's models and a distribution network that includes nearly every large corporation, has concluded that it cannot afford to be dependent on a supplier that may, after its IPO, answer to a different set of shareholders. The hill climbing machine, as Microsoft calls its training pipeline, is designed to make model improvement climbable. a repeatable system that can absorb better data, stronger rewards, and more compute without relying on anyone else's technology. Second, Anthropic confidentially filed its S-1 with the SEC on June 1 at a $965 billion post-money valuation, surpassing OpenAI's $852 billion valuation and making it the world's most valuable AI startup. The company disclosed that its run-rate revenue crossed $47 billion. OpenAI, which filed its own confidential S-1 on June 8, is reportedly targeting a valuation between $730 billion and $1 trillion with $25 billion in annualized revenue. Both companies are racing toward public listings that could bring close to $3 trillion in combined market capitalization to public markets within months of each other, alongside SpaceX's anticipated $1.75 trillion IPO. The pattern is clear. The AI industry has moved beyond the phase where companies compete on benchmark scores. They are now competing on who can lock in their market position before the next technological shift, which in this industry tends to arrive every 12 to 18 months, renders their current advantages obsolete. Microsoft is building insurance against OpenAI's independence. OpenAI and Anthropic are building moats through public market capital. And the models themselves, the actual technology, have become secondary to the question of who controls the infrastructure, the data, and the customers. And now, 3 stories from a world in which a Pennsylvania man turned a marital dispute into a demolition project, a French museum lost a banana for the 3rd time, and an Australian woman improved a public sculpture with office supplies. Story 1. In Buffalo Township, Pennsylvania, a 48-year-old man named Eric Piosa had an argument with his wife. She told him the marriage was over. He responded by climbing into an excavator parked on the property and tearing apart the rear section of his home while his wife and 2 daughters were still inside. According to police, Piosa had been drinking. The sound of the destruction was loud enough to be clearly audible on the wife's frantic 911 call. After the demolition, Piosa reportedly went inside, grabbed a gym bag and left the scene before being located and arrested. He now faces charges including causing a catastrophe, reckless endangerment, and disorderly conduct. The house is structurally unsound and likely beyond repair. One neighbor, trying to find the humor in the situation, said he would like to know what she said to him because I'll make sure I don't say it. The neighbor has been married for more than 4 decades and has never once threatened to bring down his own house during an argument. That is the kind of baseline that most people manage to maintain without conscious effort. Story 2. At the Centre Pompidou Metz in eastern France, a security guard noticed that the banana was missing. The banana in question was the centerpiece of Maurizio Cattelan's Comedian, a fresh banana duct-taped to a wall, valued at $120,000. An edition of the artwork was on display as part of the museum's Endless Sunday exhibition. The museum filed a criminal complaint, replaced the banana, and noted that this is not the first time the fruit has been stolen. A hungry visitor helped themselves to it last July. In 2023, a South Korean college student ate a version of the banana because he was hungry. In 2024, the crypto entrepreneur who paid $6.2 million for a version of the artwork ate it on video. The museum's statement condemned the act as undermining the respect due for the works on display. The artwork's value, the museum noted, is derived from its certificate of authenticity and the protocol governing its presentation, not from the perishable fruit itself. This is a reasonable position. It is also a position that becomes harder to defend every time someone eats the banana. Story 3. In Mount Gambier, Australia, a woman named Amelia Vanderhorst pleaded guilty to charge of making graffiti after she placed googly eyes on a large public sculpture called Cast in Blue. The sculpture, a large blue blob that has divided local opinion since its installation, was apparently improved by the addition of adhesive plastic eyes. Vanderhorst told the court she was high on MDMA and had consumed 3 liters of vodka before committing the act. She said she wanted to make the sculpture look funny, but admitted it was one of the stupidest things I've ever done. Magistrate Kylie Schulz, in a moment of judicial restraint that deserves recognition, told Vanderhorst that her actions mocked the sculpture and the artist. She was ordered to pay $2,000 in compensation and complete 60 hours of community service. The sculpture is called Cast in Blue. The woman was on MDMA and 3 liters of vodka. The magistrate said the actions mocked the artist. The artist, presumably, is the one person in this story who did not see the googly eyes coming. Day 105. A peace deal was announced by one party, disputed by the other, and described as a little conceptual by the person who announced it. A $1 trillion AI company filed to go public, and the company that funded it started building its own alternative. A man demolished his house with an excavator because his wife wanted a divorce, and a museum filed a police report over a missing banana. The thread that runs through all of it is that the people making the decisions are operating on timelines that do not correspond to reality. The deal is done until it is not. The model is independent until the IPO changes the incentives. The house is a home until someone decides it is not. And the banana, which has been stolen, eaten, and replaced more times than most diplomatic agreements, keeps coming back because the protocol, not the fruit, is what matters. The protocol says the banana belongs on the wall. The protocol says the deal is done. The protocol says the house is still standing. Reality, as always, is slower to update than the announcement.